If you are hearing this right now, chances are you are either currently neck deep in your annual budget.
Or maybe still recovering from the last one, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
For so many finance folks, this is that season. Kind of a collective dread almost, where strategy just gets buried under, well, mountains of manual work.
Mm-hmm.
You know the scene, those late nights, the wrestling with version control, V3 final actual dot XLSX.
Well, don't forget the thousands of emails just confirming tiny changes.
Right. And the endless spreadsheet consolidation, trying to make sense of it all, and those soul-crushing meetings trying to track down why one department's numbers don't match another's.
It's this annual marathon, and it just eats up months, really productive months, too.
It really does. So our mission today in this deep dive is really about liberation. We're focusing on how modern automation and strategic data integration can fundamentally change that whole painful process.
Yeah, get people out of the weeds.
Exactly. We want to help shift your focus away from those manual mechanics, all that spreadsheet chaos, and, back towards genuine strategy, real insight. So we pulled out the fixes for what seemed to be the 5 biggest time wasters that just keep bogging things down.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is that the tech we're talking about today, it basically makes the whole idea of a painful annual budget, well, obsolete.
Obsolete, that's a strong word.
Well, think about it. The sources we looked at, they clearly show the tools are readily available. Things like Power Query, Python's data analysis libraries, cloud computing. These aren't sci-fi anymore.
Right.
They're specifically designed to cut down that manual burden. It's all about using them so the finance team can actually be strategic advisors, not spending, 80% of their time just cleaning up data, being data janitors.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's start right in the beginning because, honestly, the budget process often stalls before you even calculate the first number, doesn't it?
Let's do it. Where does the pain start?
Time waster number 1, transforming historical data. I mean, this is where so many FP&A teams just hemorrhage time. You're pulling these massive trial balances out of the ERP.
Huge files, yeah.
You're grouping thousands of GL accounts, general ledger accounts, and then painstakingly trying to reformat all that data by cost center, maybe by product line, just so the business can actually use it to project forward.
And it's so tedious and incredibly error-prone, right? One wrong mapping.
Totally. So what's the automation fix here?
Well, this is where you get the most immediate, tangible payoff. Think about traditional Excel for a second. You're probably relying on these giant VL lookups or index match formulas. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Walls of them.
Trying to map maybe 5,000 GL codes to, 10 or 15 high-level reporting lines. If just one GL code changes or gets added in the ERP...
the whole thing can break. Your formulas return errors, or worse, incorrect numbers.
Exactly. So instead, you use automation tools. You can use Power Query's M code. It's often just labeled get and transform data right inside Excel now. Or you could use a Python script, maybe with the Pandas library.
Okay.
These tools, they connect directly to your ERP or your data warehouse. They pull the data, reshape it, and this is key, they automate the account mapping and the hierarchy roll-ups. You build that logic once.
You code it once.
You code it once using conditional, robust logic, not fragile cell references. And then every single cycle, monthly, quarterly, annually, you get a one-click refresh. Consistent, validated data.
So you're gaining back hours of prep time, but also reliability, confidence in the numbers.
Huge confidence boost. And you can spend that saved time actually looking at trends, not just formatting.
Reliability is absolutely key. Okay, so now you've got this perfect, clean data foundation. But then you immediately hit the next major hurdle, right?
Right.
Which is time waster number 2, collecting input from the business.
Ah, yes. The template distribution game.
You send out the templates, and then you just start that anxious wait, hoping they come back.
Yeah.
Hoping they come back on time. And maybe most crucially, hoping they come back in the correct format.
It really does feel like herding cats sometimes, doesn't it? And every cat seems to have invented its own dialect of Excel that doesn't quite match yours.
Exactly. They insert a column, add their own calculations. It breaks everything downstream.
So how do you enforce that compliance without just sending a million reminder emails?
What do the sources suggest?
Well, they point to 2 really critical best practices, and they're rooted in sort of technical integrity. First, you absolutely have to lock down those templates.
Okay, protect the sheet.
Yes. Use protected Excel sheets where users can only type in designated unprotected cells. Or even better sometimes, switch entirely to web-based forms for input.
Ah.
The point is, this is non-negotiable. It stops people from inserting rows, columns, weird formulas that just inevitably destroy your consolidation logic later.
Makes sense. What's the second practice?
Second, Automate the intake process itself. Don't manually copy-paste from 50 different files. Use Power Query again, or Python, to automatically scan a specific folder, collect all the submitted files, and append them together. Automatically. And as the script collects each file, it should apply data validation rules. Is the cost center code valid? Is the headcount number actually a number? Flag missing inputs or weird data types the moment they arrive.
Wow, okay, so that automated collection and pre-validation, that sounds like it could save days.
Literally days of cleanup work for the FP&A team. It's huge.
Days of saved cleanup work is massive. Absolutely.
Hmm.
But okay, let's say you solve the intake problem. We immediately run into time waster number 3, managing key assumptions.
The moving targets.
Exactly. We're talking about those critical inputs, right? FX rates, inflation projections, sales growth targets, maybe COGS percentages. They're always evolving based on the market.
And if every single business unit leader is just pulling these numbers from like the latest email chain and manually typing them into their own workbook?
Chaos. Predictable chaos. Someone's using last month's FX rate. Someone else has an old inflation number.
Precisely. So the solution here is all about centralized control. You need to establish a single source of truth for all key assumptions.
A single source. Like what? A master spreadsheet?
It could be that simple, yeah. A dedicated, clearly labeled Excel table that acts as your master assumption list. Or, for more complex setups, maybe a proper SQL database table, or even just a dictionary within your Python script environment. The tool matters less than the principle.
Okay, but how does that central update get out to everyone? If I update the interest rate assumption in that master list, how do I ensure it flows correctly to, 50 different budget workbooks instantly? That dynamic linking part sounds fragile sometimes.
It can be fragile if you rely just on basic Excel links across files. That's why structure is essential. You either use really robust dynamic links, or even better, you design your automation scripts, the ones pulling data or consolidating inputs, to pull the latest assumptions from that master source every single time they run.
Ah, okay. So the script grabs the assumption when it needs it.
Exactly. It's not relying on a link someone might break. And you absolutely need transparency, too. Clearly label your assumption versions, something like, V1.2 Q4 economic update.
Right.
The real value add here, though, is that FP&A stops just being the distributor of these numbers. They start strategically translating those macro changes, like, say, a sudden spike in commodity prices, into the actual operational impact the business needs to understand and react to.
That's a much higher value activity. Okay, so we've cleaned up historical data, we've standardized the input collection, we've centralized assumptions, we're finally ready for the actual forecasting bit. Now we tackle time waster number 4. Building the bottom-up forecasts.
Right, the real heavy lifting, projecting sales, cost of sales, operating expenses. This is often the most time-consuming part.
It really is. How does automation change this game?
This is where I think we really move into what you might call advanced finance territory. We're talking about modeling the business at a level of granularity that was, frankly, almost impossible before. Okay.
Turning what took days of manual calculation and aggregation into minutes, and producing much richer, more reliable projections in the process.
How granular are we talking?
Well, the key shift recommended in the sources is moving away from just high-level volume or revenue projections. Instead, you model sales at a highly granular level, specifically SKU by customer.
SKU by customer. For every single one.
For every single relevant combination, yes. You use tools like Python to ingest all that detailed historical sales data. Then you layer in your centralized assumptions, growth rates, customer churn probabilities, seasonality factors. And the script generates projections for potentially millions of individual records.
Okay, modeling at the SKU by customer level. That sounds amazing for accuracy, but it also sounds terrifying for processing time. If you're dealing with millions of records, complex calculations, my laptop would just melt. How do you actually scale that? How do you get that processing power?
That is exactly the bottleneck, and it's why we have to look beyond the single laptop. This is where specialized tools and cloud integration become absolutely critical.
Specialized tools like?
To handle that sheer volume and speed up the calculations, you leverage parallel computing libraries. Tools like Dask or Ray are mentioned.
Hold on, parallel computing. Okay, so someone like me who mostly lives in Excel, what does that actually mean in practice?
Okay, think of it like building a highway. If you have just one crew trying to pave the entire thing end to end, that's your single laptop CPU, it's going to take forever.
Right, ages.
Parallel computing, using libraries like Dask or Ray, is like splitting that huge paving job into, say, 100 smaller sections, and then you have 100 crews working on those sections simultaneously, all at the same time.
Ah, okay. Divide and conquer.
Exactly. Dask and Ray manage that process, splitting the work, running it in parallel across all the cores of your machine, or even across multiple machines, and then putting the results back together seamlessly. It dramatically accelerates the processing time.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if even my whole machine isn't enough? If it's millions and millions of records?
That's where the cloud comes in. To scale that processing power beyond your local machine, you host those heavy-duty Python scripts on Cloud Functions. We're talking about services like AWS Lambda, maybe EC2 instances, or Azure Functions.
So you're running the script somewhere else.
Essentially, yes, it's elastic scaling. You're basically renting a supercomputer cluster just for the, say, 5 minutes you need to run that massive scale by customer calculation.
Wow.
And then when it's done, you shut it down immediately. You only pay for those 5 minutes of compute time. It solves the massive processing bottleneck without needing a huge capital investment in your own hardware.
That concept, renting a supercomputer for 5 minutes, that makes the whole cloud thing immediately digestible. That really is speed and efficiency.
Yeah.
Which brings us then to our final hurdle, time waster number 5, compiling and analyzing the baseline budget.
Right. Getting all those individual pieces, sales forecasts, OpEx budgets from departments, COD/GS calculations, bringing them all together into that first complete picture, the foundation for any scenario analysis.
How does automation help here at the very end?
This is really the final automation payoff. Because you've managed the data and inputs consistently all the way through, the compilation becomes much easier. You use Python again, or maybe Power BI's data modeling capabilities to instantly merge all that departmental data into a single, cohesive financial model.
And because it was clean coming in.
The integration is relatively seamless. But crucially, the automation doesn't just compile. It also runs instant validation checks.
Like what?
Like, for example, automatically checking that the revenue drivers you modeled way back at the CIU level actually balance out against the cost drivers submitted by the operations team. Or ensuring debits equal credits across the board, stuff that takes ages manually.
And variance reports.
It's reduced instantly, highlighting any inconsistencies or big swings that you need to investigate right away.
Okay, so once that baseline budget is compiled and validated much faster, you're moving beyond just forecasting, right? You're into proper strategic decision support.
Absolutely, that's the whole point. Instead of being stuck with just a single static point estimate, the best guess budget number, you're finally freed up to run much more sophisticated analyses.
You mean like different scenarios? Best case, worst case?
Yes, complex what-if scenarios, definitely. But even more advanced than that, you can run things like Monte Carlo simulations.
Okay, Monte Carlo. Why is that better than just running, say, 3 scenarios, a high, a low, and a base case? Isn't that enough?
Well, Monte Carlo is different because it doesn't just look at 3 fixed points. It runs thousands, even tens or thousands of random simulations. It uses the probability distribution you define for your key input variables, like sales growth could be anywhere between 2% and 8%, but most likely around 5%.
Okay.
So it runs all these simulations, and the output isn't just one number, it's an entire distribution of potential outcomes. It tells you the likelihood of hitting a certain profit target or the probability of your cash reserves falling below critical level under various conditions.
So it gives you a sense of the range of possibilities and the likelihood of each.
Exactly. It helps you identify vulnerabilities or maybe hidden opportunities that a traditional static budget, even with a few scenarios, would simply never reveal. You understand the risk profile much better.
This whole automated integrated model, it really sounds like a complete paradigm shift. And it leads perfectly into what you call the biggest idea from the sources, the integrated budgeting process. You said we've been talking about eliminating the annual marathon.
Right, but this idea suggests maybe the marathon shouldn't even exist in the first place, at least not in that painful once-a-year format.
So what's the alternative?
The vision is more like a living model, something that evolves continuously. Contrast that painful annual cycle we all know with a system where your actual financial results automatically flow from the ERP directly into your planning model every month, maybe even more often.
So actuals update automatically.
Yeah, and instead of waiting until, say, October to kick off the massive budget effort, the FP&A team is constantly refining assumptions, maybe tweaking driver models, and extending projections out, maybe weekly, maybe monthly. It's continuous.
Which means the business leaders, they always have an up-to-date financial outlook. It removes that huge lag between what they think is happening operationally and what the official budget or forecast says.
Precisely. The lag disappears.
Mm.
The core belief behind this, mentioned in the source, is really powerful. Budgeting shouldn't be an annual marathon. It should be a continuous rhythm of planning, learning, and adapting.
A continuous rhythm. I like that.
And in that model, automation handles the mechanics, the data pulls, the calculations, consolidation, which frees up the finance professionals to focus entirely on the insights, the strategy, the decision support. That's where the real value is. That's where the finance professional becomes truly indispensable.
It absolutely is. And I think it's so important to reiterate that point.
Yeah.
This isn't about automation replacing finance professionals. Not at all.
No, it's the opposite.
It fundamentally amplifies them. These tools, Power Query, Python, the cloud, they allow the highly skilled people doing this work to spend way less time fighting with pivot tables and tracking down version 3 versus version 4.
And way more time actually shaping company strategy and advising the business.
Exactly. The future of budgeting, then. It's not just about building faster Excel models. It's really about building smarter finance, a finance function that's connected, continuous, and deeply insight-driven.
Well said.
So we'll leave you, our listener, with this final thought, kind of building on that idea of continuous planning. If automation takes care of all the mechanics, the calculation, the data gathering, the version control nightmares, what critical, high-level business assumption are you currently not challenging often enough?
Good question.
Maybe it's about customer churn rates, or a competitor's potential pricing move, or some looming regulatory risk. What assumption isn't getting the scrutiny it deserves simply because you're too busy fighting with spreadsheets during that annual budget crunch?
Yeah, what strategic insight is being missed right now, buried under the manual rhythm?
Think about that. And think about how much smarter, how much more impactful your finance function could be when you finally manage to step off that traditional budgeting treadmill.